You die. The death screen appears. Almost immediately, your brain has an answer. His gun was better. That weapon is overpowered. I got third-partied. My teammate wasn't there. I missed my shots. You queue for another raid. Nothing changes. Tomorrow, the same thing happens. Different location, different enemy, different weapon, same result. Because you are trying to solve the wrong problem. The player who killed you was only the final chapter. The story started much earlier. 30 seconds before the gunfight, maybe even 5 minutes before it, the real mistake wasn't the bullet. It was the decision that made the bullet possible. And until you learn to find that decision, you'll keep improving the wrong things. Welcome back to How Winners Think. One of the biggest reasons players stop improving isn't because they lack talent. It isn't because they have bad aim. It isn't because they don't play enough. It's mainly because they are asking the wrong question after every death. Most players ask, how did I die? Winning players ask, what decision made this death possible? Those questions sound almost identical, but they are not. One searches for blame, the other searches for improvement. Today, we are going to explore why outcomes are often misleading, why your biggest mistakes happen long before the fight begins, and how elite players review their raids in a completely different way. Because improvement doesn't happen when you understand the death. It happens when you understand the decisions that created it. Imagine two players cross an open field. The first survives. The second gets shot by a sniper. Was crossing the field a good decision? Most players answer based on the outcome. The survivor says yes. The dead player says no. But neither answer is correct. A decision should never be judged only by whether it worked. Good decisions sometimes fail. Bad decisions sometimes succeed. Imagine flipping a coin. If it lands on heads once, that doesn't prove heads is guaranteed. The same idea also applies in Arc Raiders. Sometimes you survive terrible rotations simply because nobody was watching. Sometimes you die after making the correct decision because another squad arrived unexpectedly. Outcome isn't proof, process is. Elite players separate those two ideas. You see, instead of asking, did this work? They ask, would I make this decision again knowing what I knew at the time? That's a much more of a harder question, but it's also the one that creates improvement. One of the simplest improvement tools ever created comes from engineering. It's called the 5 whys. Instead of accepting the first answer, you keep asking why. Now, let's imagine a raid. You die while crossing a road. Most players stop there. I got sniped. But let's keep going. Why? Because I crossed open ground. Why? Because I wanted the fastest route. Why? Because I was rushing to extraction. Why? Because I had valuable loot. Why? Because I became impatient after finding good gear. Now we are somewhere useful. The sniper wasn't the real problem. Impatience was. Aim practice won't fix impatience. A better weapon won't fix impatience. Only better decision making will. That's why elite players rarely stop at the first answer. They dig deeper. Because every layer removes another excuse until only the real problem remains. The most dangerous mistakes in Arc Raiders aren't dramatic. They are quiet. Choosing the wrong route, ignoring distant gunfire, staying in one area too long, looting one extra container, failing to rotate after making noise, standing still while checking your inventory. None of those decisions appear on the death screen. The game simply tells you who killed you. It doesn't tell you what created the opportunity. That's your job. Strong players know that every fight has a history. Every death has a chain of decisions. If you only analyze the final 5 seconds, you'll miss the part that actually matters entirely. Most players watch replays emotionally. That guy was camping. He got lucky. I couldn't see him. That weapon is broken. Elite players watch differently. They pause the replay 30 seconds before the fight. Then they ask, where was I? What information did I have? What information did I ignore? What alternatives existed? What decision led me here? Do you now notice the difference? They are not studying the enemy, they are studying themselves, because that's the only part that they can control. That is why strong players improve faster. Every death becomes a lesson instead of an excuse. Improvement isn't complicated, it just requires honesty. And after every death, identify one decision, not 5, not 10, and certainly not 1. Maybe you stayed too long. Maybe you ignored sound. Maybe you rushed. Maybe you fought while overloaded with loot. Maybe you assumed the building was empty. Pick one thing, improve on that, then move on. If you repeat that process every day, you'll improve faster than someone playing twice as many hours without reflection. Because experience alone doesn't create improvement, reflection does. Think about the strongest players you have ever watched, right? It often looks like they learn impossibly quickly, but they aren't smarter. They are simply solving better problems. They don't spend hours blaming weapons or even matchmaking or even teammates. They spend those hours asking better questions. Questions like, what assumption did I make? What information did I ignore? What decision would I change if I replayed this raid? Those questions produce answers. Blame doesn't. Complaints don't. Excuses don't. Every great competitor eventually understands something very simple. And that is, the game isn't trying to beat you. It's trying to teach you. The question is whether you are paying attention or not. The next time you die, don't queue in immediately. Pause. Take 30 seconds. Ask yourself these 3 questions. 1. What decision made this fight possible? 2. What information did I ignore? And 3. Would I make that same decision again? If the answer is yes, great, keep doing it. But if the answer is no, you have now found your next lesson. Write it down, then move on. 1 lesson per raid, that's enough. Every player dies, even the best. Death, though, isn't the difference. Learning is. The strongest players don't waste energy trying to erase every mistake. They identify the one decision that mattered most. Then they fix it. One decision becomes one habit. One habit becomes one mindset. One mindset changes every future raid. That's how real improvement happens. Not through hundreds of hours, through hundreds of honest conversations with yourself. Every death asks a question. Most players, honestly and truthfully, never answer it. If you remember one thing from this video, remember this: don't solve the death, solve the decision that created it. Because once you fix the decision, the outcome usually fixes itself. The next time you are sent back to the lobby, resist the urge to blame your aim, your weapon, your luck, or your teammates. Instead, rewind the raid. Find the decision that made everything else possible, because that's where improvement lives. Not in the final bullet, but in the first mistake. This has been How Winners Think. Until next time, the best players don't review their deaths, they review their decisions. Think first.